Picture the whole world suddenly freezing over into an ice age. Outside, the cold has settled at a biting minus 60 degrees Celsius, turning heat and food into the most precious treasures in South Korea's frozen city. The survivors started out trying to stay alive together, but soon found there just wasn't enough food or water for all of them. And then, the quiet hallways of apartment blocks suddenly turned into a dangerous battlefield. In the middle of the madness, Hangfong stands fearless in his fortified base, surrounded by heat, girls, and plenty of food. He is a man who traveled back in time before the world ended to get ready, and he even got special powers that let him make food multiply and grow huge. He didn't stop there. Instead, he went on to build a real fortified base complete with heat, greenhouses, and even a sauna. So how did it all begin? Let's find out. Suddenly the radio goes dead, and a loud voice screams Hanfong's name. The guy shivered from the cold as he walked toward the door to open it. Peeking through the hole, he finds it's his crush Hyona, shivering from the cold and too weak to speak. He swings the door open without a second thought to check on her, and then rushes to pull her inside. Suddenly, Hyona jumps up to kiss him, leaving Hanfong staring in total shock. She's pouring her heart into the kiss, leaving him speechless and secretly feeling like a fool for finally getting the girl he always wanted. Right at this moment, Hona finally admits she has always loved him. After falling into a scary apocalypse, she finally realizes that someone like him truly cares about others. To drive her point home, Hona makes him feel her racing heart against his palm and tells him she is ready to do anything for him. And just like that, he falls into her honey trap because while he's daydreaming about birds and bees, Kiona rubs her thigh against his leg to make him even more distracted and careless with his feelings. He opens his heart and says that even though she means everything to him, their current way of acting is just not making sense for them right now. Hyona is a master manipulator because she tricks our boy into closing his eyes so he can enjoy the whole experience. He closes his eyes, brimming with childlike excitement and wondering what comes next. But then, just after he gets his first kiss with his crush, her nasty boyfriend smashes his head in. A massive blow cracks against his head, leaving him collapsed in a pool of blood, while Hyona trembles in terror at seeing someone killed so coldly. But her boyfriend snaps her out of it by reminding her they agreed this man had to die, because in this apocalyptic world, no one is safe, and they never would have spared Hanfong. They don't care about him at all. Instead, they are thrilled because they found Hanfong's treasure and supplies. The kind man, now dying in a pool of his own blood and unable to move, sees Hyona laughing with her new lover just before his life ends because of a cruel woman's plot, leaving him to make a final promise that if he gets another chance, he will never let anyone use and throw him away again as he fades into darkness, only to feel a warm, glowing light pulling him closer, making him think he is finally heading to heaven. But then his pure hope turns to sorrow as his spirit feels a world of pain and shatters into 100 pieces. After that nightmare ends, he suddenly jerks awake right out of his bed. His face is slick with sweat as he looks around, wondering where he is. Hanfong was slipping away just seconds ago, but now he is safe again. It isn't just that he's okay. The world is fine too, with no signs of an apocalypse in sight. The sun stayed warm for 30 minutes of waiting, giving him a feeling of heat he never thought he'd feel again. Hanfong glanced at his calendar and saw that today was June 28th, meaning the apocalypse from the original story wouldn't begin for another week on July 15th. His face showed shock and confusion as he realized he had somehow gone back just weeks before the apocalypse, only to find his hand glowing bright red, a strange new change he definitely hadn't expected since waking up. He waves his hand to dismiss the feeling, and while the warm glow doesn't hurt, he's convinced his mind is playing tricks until Hanfeng suddenly sneezes, causing the same hand to flare with an uncontrollable, blinding green light that grows far larger than before. He stands there, hurried and panicked, completely lost with his brand new problem. A strange light that appeared from nowhere begins to shrink in his hand, acting very differently from the red glow. Sitting down, he admits that since the green one woke up, he feels completely drained. Hanfong waves his hand in frustration and suddenly realizes he's living out one of those awesome mana stories he loves, where the main character gets reborn with superpowers. Bro yanks out a knife, hoping for a miracle, but the blade stays dull, and he ends up looking like a total clown. Not to mention that his tummy is growling from the energy he lost. He opens his fridge only to find it empty, and with each passing moment, the danger of passing out again grows more real. As soon as he spots the jar of roasted soybeans, a brilliant idea pops into his head. The apocalypse means we can only eat these few snacks, and though they aren't real meals, they're enough to fill us up for now. He grabs a bean and pops it into his mouth, only for it to instantly explode and grow into a full-sized plant. His hand stopped glowing and the tiredness vanished from him. Hanfang can't figure out if the soybeans are the problem or if it's something he did. He snatches up a bean sprout, pops it open, and realizes with a gasp that he just gained a brand new power. Hanfang is so amazed that he decides to study it with all his heart. But he's not in shape to handle everything alone, so his first move is to stock up on supplies so he doesn't run out during the apocalypse. He heads straight to the supermarket. Next, he pushes through a noisy, distracted crowd while trying to sort out his mind about his two glowing hands, one of which makes him tired. But his most exciting discovery so far is that when he touches soybeans with his light, they instantly turn into bean sprouts. He's still confused about exactly how his power works, and that keeps him from being happy. As he gets lost in his own thoughts, a familiar voice suddenly speaks to him. Hyona, the one who betrayed him before, has returned to face him again. She is stunningly beautiful, but falling for her will drag you straight into the grave. Hanfang is totally stunned to bump into her again in this way. For 3 whole years, Lee Hyona has been the one person he's secretly loved. He tried every trick he knew to make her like him, but inside he knew he was just a backup plan waiting to happen. After she tricked him into getting killed so brutally, he is absolutely furious, with pure rage burning through his veins. But since he was reborn, he won't fly off the handle like a normal person might. Hanfang steadies himself, deciding to delay his revenge for another day so he can focus on gathering supplies first. Hyona waves her hand to get his attention, noticing he looks lost in thought. He did his best to stay polite and told Hyona she was so beautiful that she actually took his breath away. She calls him a smooth talker and sees this as the perfect moment to invite him out for some shopping. But no matter how hard she tries, he walks right past Hyona as if she doesn't exist, leaving her speechless with a harsh dose of reality. Hanfang knows she's just inviting him in to use his money for her own groceries, and he's finally decided to stop being anyone's pet because that kind of thing won't happen again. Everyone knows the Waldemar Shopping Plaza is the best supermarket around. Back in the original timeline, this place was wiped clean and left empty by midnight when the Arctic apocalypse began, and no one knows who pulled off such a fast and mysterious job. For now, the clever Hanfang is frantically building up a massive survival stash using a guide to gather everything from food and medicine to warm clothes and fuel, but he has hit a second major roadblock. While Bro sits in a sulk because he can't afford it, a sudden message arrives showing he's been approved for a massive 170,000 yuan loan for the year. It turned out to be exactly the lottery ticket he had been waiting for all along. With the apocalypse looming and no one left to pay back the debts, Hanfang frantically dug through every loan app he could find online, twisting his fingers in a desperate scramble to borrow money from everywhere he could. The scene shifts to Hyena, who is furious about how he treated her today. This stuck-up person is still bitter because her personal stylist rejected her, which says a lot about her, especially after she got the guy killed in his past life. Hyona is swearing at Hanfang for being a hopeless loser with no car of his own and doesn't expect to ever be nice to him again. Just as if the devil himself had spoken, a car pulled up and started honking at her. Hyona gasps in shock when she realizes the driver is the very same guy she was just talking about. Hanfang stops by to chat with her and tells her he just bought the car. After all, his father has been making a ton of money in the States, so it's only natural he sent over some cash for him to have fun with while also telling her he was busy taking his father to the airport. The news actually calms her, leading her to think he rejected her only because he had important work to do, so she apologizes for asking him out during such a busy time. Just like the Gaslighter Pro Max Girl Edition always does, she puts on a cute face while crying and complaining about how mean he was to her. Hanfang's reaction was a wild mix of calling her foolish and then pulling her close to promise he'll never leave someone as important as Hyona. The proud girl acts like she won the lottery and keeps playing on his heart, pretending she feels the same way just to trick him into watching a movie and sharing a nice dinner. Just as she's speaking, our boy shouts, "Peace thee out," and immediately starts packing his bags while complaining about how busy he is with all the stuff he needs to take back. Even Hona is confused about why he suddenly decided to buy so many things. Hanfang acts cool and says he did it just because he wanted to, then raises her hopes by telling her he also got a present for Hyona. Feeling happy and full of energy, she decides to head home with the hope of seeing it again later. As Hyona walks away, she looks so happy because she thinks she totally won the game. But she doesn't realize our boy wears the same trickster grin because they're both playing mind games with each other. And he won't ever spill a single secret about his hidden stockpile because it's his only chance to survive this cursed apocalypse until the moment the world falls apart, when he'll finally get his revenge on the bastard who killed him and Hona. He admits he's excited to enjoy the apocalypse this time, and I can already see Hona about to eat something that's going to be really satisfying. Only 2 weeks left before the world freezes in a blanket of heavy snow, plunging temperatures down to minus 20 degrees Celsius. For the next month, the cold will creep up slowly until it hits minus 70 degrees, blankets the whole world in snow, and makes stepping outside impossible. That's why food matters so much. He packed his apartment full of supplies, hiding them under covers so no one would suspect he was stockpiling. For the trickiest supplies, he'll sneak them out in the dark when nobody is watching. When the world ends, power will be the next big problem. So Hanfeng bought a whole year's worth of fuel just to make sure everything stays running. To face his next challenge, he realizes the heating is broken. So he hires a crew to rebuild his home strong enough to survive the coming apocalypse. He finally set up a secret supply room where no one will ever guess what he's really hiding or when he needs to grab something. By the time he finished getting ready, July 14th had arrived, leaving just one day before the heat would become dangerously hot. Once everything was ready, the last thing on his list was to get to know his superpower. To survive the winter apocalypse without freezing, Hanfeng knows his supplies alone won't keep him alive. And that is exactly where his plant-based powers will shine as a beacon of hope. He stands before the soybeans he grew with his own power, ready to taste his success. The problem is he still doesn't know what makes his power work, but Hanfeng decides to take a bite anyway, hoping the food is at least safe to eat despite his fears. Since he was able to finish half the plate without any trouble, he now knows he can safely use his power to create and eat food. But the real puzzle is figuring out exactly how or what makes his hand glow like that. Based on all his experiments, he has only ever tested his power on soybeans. So, he opens his fridge, peeking inside to find some extra veggies to try on. Soon the noon heat fades, and the evening arrives. Hanfeng blinked his heavy eyes open, wondering if he had just passed out. He clutches a stalk of broccoli while his kitchen is covered in a mess of vegetables. His own power drains him so much that he can barely think straight, and that is the only trouble he has faced so far. Feeling the familiar taste of those soybeans, he realized he'd finally learned something new about his power just before he passed out. He sent a load of supplies down to test his strength, and then turned his power on a new batch of plants. Here's the weird part. Some of those plants just sat there like they didn't care a bit. But for others, like seeds that turned into full plants, just as he did with his soybeans, the story continued. There's even a third kind, some of which blew up straight in his hand, leaving us still wondering why. Hanfeng also found black, coal-like chunks of burnt material left behind after they blew up. But the best part is that our body can save these same fuels for later use to keep us warm. With this, he finally figured out how to stay warm against the freezing apocalypse that was coming. Excited, he kept practicing and trying new things. And even though he stumbled at first, Hanfeng soon found that focusing his power created strong magic that finally gave him what he wanted. The man ran out of strength and crashed down to the floor. Back in the present, he looks utterly baffled by his own powers, since some plants bend to his will while others ignore him completely. It's tough to tell what will work and what won't. Even so, he discovered that the trigger's true power lives deep within his mind, so he now meditates on becoming one with nature. It's a feeling that links his mind and body right together. All the wild ideas he dreamed up finally turned into real hits. The moment Hanfeng opened his eyes, he saw his hand glowing green and felt relieved, proving that his power lies inside his mind. To really test it out, he throws a bunch of meat his way, just to be sure. The poor guy sighs in disappointment when he realizes his plan won't work on meat, trapping him forever in a life of eating only plants. Even after he focused hard and begged for his powers to work, nothing happened. This makes him doubt his own thoughts and remember his meditation trick, where he sees two colors, red and green, but has only tried using green so far. This time, he presses his eyes shut tight, hoping to link his mind to his second power. To his shock, his hand begins to glow red and melts the meat into a nasty, spiky lump that no longer looks like food. Disgusted by what he saw, he threw the meat down, stepped closer to check it again, pinched it, then grabbed it to wonder if his red light somehow reacted with the flesh, especially since it looked perfectly cooked and made him question if the red light only served to heat things up. He looks at his hand again and realizes the meat isn't just cooked, it's actually falling apart. After learning this truth, he discovered that the green light races evolution forward while the red light halts it until everything falls apart. So he presses his hands together with the meat to merge both forces. Suddenly, a flash of yellow appears, and the meat grows into a massive slab. But this made him wonder where his soybeans went, since they vanished and likely merged right into the meat. Hanfeng was so shocked by the power he just unleashed that he had to take a closer look and realize the meat in front of him was the freshest he'd ever seen. He can't wait to get one more shot. But his luck runs out when Bro fails so hard that everything goes black. Yet he slams his hands down in frustration before finding patience to finally test his powers. He felt thrilled that he found so many new things in just one day. If only he could master this power completely. Bro thinks he's about to turn into Superman and stand tall at the very top of the world. But then the fool understands that food alone won't save him. He needs a weapon to keep the other humans from killing him. Just as he was about to run out and grab a weapon, a terrible truth hit him. The end of the world had finally started. It's just like last time, with the whole world getting covered in crazy amounts of snow, even in the middle of July. He steps out anyway, convinced he must find a gun before the temperature drops to minus 45 degrees, even though buying one is illegal here. Lost in his own thoughts, he watches a guy with broccoli-styled hair loudly claim he's the younger brother of Lao Wang from the Shay Gang leader group, just using that my brother is richer trick to win a petty argument. Hanfang instantly spots that funny-looking clown who looks like he just rolled out of a trash can. The funniest part is that everyone has decided to call him Homeless Joe. Lee's and Homeless Joe live next door to each other, and the contractor Lee's knows, who is connected to everyone, often helps them out. People stop him to ask what's happening, but he acts like he's the busiest guy in the neighborhood, constantly rushing off to work on his projects with his big brother. That bro has no job and keeps complaining on his phone, pretending he's got millions tied up in some project. Hanfang stares at the guy and thinks, can this idiot help me find the weapon I need? He waves to Homeless Joe and acts like they've known each other for years. So, the thing is, this guy doesn't really know our boy at all. Hanfang plays it cool as Shurao Han, tricking the proud homeless guy into apologizing for forgetting their past while he's busy with too much work to do. Hanfang glances around, then rushes up to the punk and starts telling him his whole story. Once he finishes explaining, Homeless Joe is stunned and can't believe the guy even needs a gun. Right now, Hanfang is speechless, but before he can come up with an excuse, the blonde punk warns him that guns are illegal and dangerous, and even though Hanfang has connections to get them, Homeless Joe isn't in the mood for trouble. Hanfang explains he needs it for self-defense since people hold grudges against him, sharing a made-up tale of a man carelessly spitting in his face while they rode bikes to work. Of course, it made him furious, so he marched up to the clown and began pounding him while everyone watched. Once he had humiliated the man and let him go, the man secretly held a grudge and promised to come back with his friends. So the very next day, Bro got absolutely crushed by the whole gang, who mocked him and roughed up Hanfang from head to toe. After the beast was beaten down, the homeless man named Joe, who sympathized with his story and insisted that spitting is too far, now thinks Hanfang might be missing the point of his complaints. Still, Homeless Joe steps in like a guardian angel, promises to fix everything by calling his big brother, and Hanfang is thrilled that the plan is finally working. Homeless Joe tells them to grab the boss since his fancy car is at the shop right now. Hanfang's cool with it, letting Homeless Joe know he has a vehicle ready for them to work with. As they drive off, Homeless Joe is stunned by the car's price tag until he learns our boy paid only $700,000, which seems like a steal to him. Bro is snapping pics like he's the star of every Instagram story. It's hilarious because he acts like that SUV is actually his own. The big brother talks about his friends chilling by a fire while complaining about the crazy weather. Hanfang's car pulls up and Homeless Joe bursts out, acting all smug while his friends can't believe he bought an SUV with his own money. Hanfang feels that Homeless Joe is really bold for speaking his mind right in front of the car's owner. In the next scene, the punk leads Hanfang to his boss, a tattooed gang leader who is furious to see his brother and immediately kicks the blonde punk out. Homeless Joe puts all the pressure on Hanfang, telling him that his friend is desperate to buy a gun. The gang leader looks surprised for a moment before giving our boy a scary look. Hanfang is shaking in fear while the boss just rolls his eyes, annoyed that they traveled all this way for a measly gun when they could have found something way cooler. The boss orders his lackey to grab a handgun and toss it over to Hanfang in exchange for $6,000. But our boy isn't feeling like messing around with those tiny dick pistols. Nah, he's here ready to switch into full John Wick mode and asking for a long gun with a scope. The boss gets mad at the kid for asking for a sniper rifle and tells him he can't just walk around like he owns the place or try to bargain, even though the boss is just being a stubborn jerk and getting angry for no real reason. That's where Joe, who lives without a home, steps up to share another tale, this time about Hanfang's wife who betrayed him 3 times. When the storytelling finally ends, the boss erupts in a furious tantrum, his rage aimed squarely at our boy's well-being. From what we see, these silly tales look like they belong in a movie. Finally, the boss agrees to let Hanfang get a sniper rifle after a few days, and he's so happy that his request is finally being handled. The boss orders his helper to grab a semi-auto gun for him too. Hanfang is totally stunned when he sees him handing over the handgun for free. With a grateful nod, our boy quietly shares a big secret with the gang. He chats about being close with the government and warns that the weather is only going to get worse, so everyone needs to grab supplies fast before they run out. Hanfang looks so serious now that his words feel like a heavy burden. The boss agreed to listen, and that's how they wrapped up the meeting. Walking back, Homeless Joe says he handled that meeting like a pro mediator and is glad his brother was in a good mood today. Hanfang is so grateful he wants to buy Homeless Joe cigarettes. And after putting on a brave act, Joe finally agrees to the offer, hilariously asking for 8 cartons as if it were a simple job. While Hanfang ignores his ranting and checks off his apocalypse supplies, he's ready to study his new powers and just needs to figure out how to eat before everything becomes easy. Just as Bro is confidently walking his talk, he trips right over Homeless Joe and takes a nasty fall, leaving Hanfang shaking in pain while Joe is totally confused about what just happened. Our boy is pretty sure he broke his leg, so he hands Joe the keys to drive them to the hospital. She stared at him in silence, then shamefully admitted she didn't even have a driver's license. So instead, he's forced to go with the old-school method, and the punk attempts to help our boy lean on his side. But the scene was so bleak that Hanfang called a taxi just to escape the misery. Next, the story takes us to the hospital. In the quiet reception area, head nurse John works the night shift, watching as the snow outside piles up hour by hour. Out of nowhere, she gets a frantic call asking her to rush to the hall because they're short on staff. Our boy really did break his leg, and now he's at the hospital feeling terrible after finding out the bad news, waiting 1 more hour to take his medicine and go home after the doctor decided his plan didn't work out. Brother Lee waves goodbye, saying he's got a mountain of deals to handle because his day is packed beyond belief. Well, that means Hanfang is back at the very beginning. He's alone with a badly hurt leg, while the hospital is packed with people fleeing the terrible weather and heat that warn us of worse things to come. Hanfang stands patiently in the endless line, hoping to wait for his medicine will finally end soon. He sees a pretty head nurse in the distance, busy checking a patient's pulse, and since she's so helpful to the hospital, the doctors and other nurses are glad to have her around. While she handles her duties, she knocks the wind right out of our boy, leaving Hanfang swooning in disbelief that someone so young could be a head nurse. She treats every patient with such kindness, and let's be honest, she looks absolutely adorable from head to toe. Yep, he's singing again, this time for a different lady, but while he admires her, an old man rushes in asking for help with his hurting back, and Jinayon can't help but remind him that they're already short-staffed, so it will take a while. The sleazy old man's real goal is to take advantage of the head nurse, so he secretly slips a camera below her legs to sneak a photo while she's busy helping others, and she promises to send him the x-ray later when things are less chaotic. But the old geyser doesn't just stop there. He switches to full PDF mode and clings tightly to her body. The innocent head nurse doesn't suspect a thing and promises that a doctor will be here soon to check on the patient. But here's the catch. The old geyser goes all in and claims a huge portion of the hospital's amazing bakery. Just as he tries to grab another one, our boy hurls his crutch right into the old man's face, knocking him down and sending the head nurse rushing over to check on him, while Hanfang apologizes for not knowing how to throw something with such deadly speed. Hanfang pretends to look at the old man's phone just as the old geyser yells at him to stop. Our boy sees the picture hanging in his gallery and gets really angry. He can't believe this jerk took a photo of the nurse and even touched her, so he immediately confronts him, threatens to call security to lock him up, and figures it would be great to get rid of such a selfish patient who just likes taking advantage of others. Hanfang isn't giving back the phone and has promised to share the report on social media if he ever catches someone like that creep doing it again. The old man can't do anything, so he runs away in frustration, even though the guy who was in pain just seconds ago suddenly dashes away faster than light from the hospital. Even the head nurse was speechless from how fast he ran, while Hanfang realized that some people in this world are truly clueless. He shows her the picture and points out that the man was bad from the start, so Hanfang lets her deal with it and even gives her the phone to call the police. Jean beams with joy as she grabs the device, but a chilling thought stops her cold. If Hanfang's ankle was broken, how did she just stand up? That thought hits him hard. He just broke his leg and only kept moving because he was scared, and now the pain finally catches up to him and he screams out in agony. Soon after, she hurriedly wrapped him up in bandages. Luckily, Hanfang feels no more pain, so the head nurse is so thankful to him that she promises no one will ever try to hurt her again. While she's still talking, our boy's foot is being pushed straight into her 2 different sides. Hanfang thinks this girl simply won't learn anytime soon. Jean is called back to her work and stumbles away, telling our boy to come back in a week for a real checkup. Hanfang realizes with a heavy heart that in just 1 week, everything will change and he will never see her again. He walks away, carrying that heavy, sad thought in his head. The next day, the sky turns against us. News is buzzing around the world about big drops in the temperature. Even Dubai and Egypt are getting snow, something never seen before, so experts from 46 countries have rushed together to meet and figure out what's really happening. Experts say the bitter cold is only temporary and will break soon, so they warn everyone to stay inside and follow safety rules to stay comfortable, while Hanfang remains calm in his modified room with a heater that never stops giving warmth and nothing to fear, even though the news keeps claiming the disaster will pass when he knows it's just a lie to control the public, making him feel foolish for ever believing them. But this time, everything has changed, for he is finally ready, fully stocked with supplies, and his heating system is running strong. For now, there's hardly anything left to worry him. The building group chat has gone wild, with people complaining about the freezing cold and saying they can't stay warm anymore. The most thrilling part of this group chat is that one anonymous member suddenly reveals that the Ice Age apocalypse is about to start and that the snowstorm is actually coming from deep inside the earth. The messages leave Hanfeng stunned because no one is supposed to know this secret yet. Hang's mind instantly flags this random mysterious stranger as someone to watch out for, because as the story's main character, Hanfeng is the only one who knows the apocalypse is coming. What was once a happy neighborhood has turned into a restless mob on leashes as residents tag the property managers to fix the snowstorm's mess, turning their boring text chat into a lively theme park where everyone shows up as tiny cartoon avatars. Angry residents are furious that the snow piled up in front of the exit is stopping them from grocery shopping, making them feel they paid way too much for terrible service and ready to demand a serious talk with a property agent if the situation doesn't improve. While you're stuck, the property managers on the other end are panicking and begging for your forgiveness for the trouble. But a few weak apologies won't fix the anger residents feel over bad management, because honestly, they want their money back and this isn't worth it. In the middle of all this mess stands Hang Fun, looking annoyed as neighbors waste their energy arguing over nothing, even though the building owner has no magic to fix the snowstorm. Yet, hope still burns for some within the complex. One resident, named Janyu, is wise enough to admit that fighting a blizzard is a losing battle, so he suggests the group stick together to help each other instead of making things worse. Since natural disasters are beyond the property manager's control, wasting energy complaining about them is a useless game. Not everyone in the lobby agrees with John's relaxed vibe, and he's short-sighted while people are so unhappy that instead of teaming up, they turn on him for speaking out against the property managers. Sheen tries to say he's not picking sides, but just being realistic since arguing with property management won't get them anywhere. But the crowd won't settle down until the snow melts so they can get food, because they certainly aren't planning to starve to death. Sheen tries to reason with the stubborn crowd by warning them that cleared snow doesn't mean the roads are safe, suggesting they walk to the grocery store instead since clearing paths for feet is much easier than clearing roads, while Hang Fun makes a sour face upon spotting the self-proclaimed guru lecturing everyone. The way our boy stares at him shows their past is messy, just as a grumpy guy with a face full of annoyance suddenly jumps into the conversation. He speaks plainly, saying that anyone who wants food must go outside and start clearing the roads. Otherwise, all that gossip won't melt the snow. After he logs off, another guy steps up, eager to go outside and help clean up the mess. Hang Fong knows this rough-talking thug from before. Slowly, the townspeople join the crew to clear the roads. Even the tiny, soft creatures are ready to get their hands dirty for this great cause. Then there is the unforgettable Hyona, who has stepped up to help as well. Hang Fong can't quite believe that someone like her ever agreed to join. It turns out her volunteering is just a trick to lure in the guys who don't want a pretty woman like her around, so she can sneak away and drain herself when men are present. Just as we suspected, she snaps the moment to dump all her work on others, which is exactly what a selfish person like her would do. Just as Hang Fong logs out, his frustrated face shows that this woman always knows how to ruin his mood. Right now, she's typing out a message to him. Why, you ask? Well, because that desperate Gunner will do anything she tells him to. She asks him to carry her food supplies. She even adds a bonus shot of her bare legs, showing off her thick thighs with almost no clothes on, all while aiming straight for the boy's heart. Hang Fong gives her a perfect score of 10 for her bold move, even though she dared to tease him with almost no clothes on despite the freezing cold. With his leg broken and unable to chase the treasure, he decides to toss back a teasing remark guaranteed to make her skin crawl. Just as he promised, his words worked, and she was so furious she felt like stomping right on his foot. It's only the third day of this blizzard with temperatures below 20 degrees, but the central heater still hums on, unaware of the destruction that's about to start. The internet stayed online, giving everyone their usual distraction, so like any bored teen, Hang Fun just scrolled through TikTok watching busta women in short shorts. Though honestly, he's already bored by the apocalypse's second day and starts wondering what loneliness can really do to a man. His broken leg is keeping him stuck and cramped, So, with no other choice, he jumps straight into watching video after video for the next few months until he's healed. That's when he stumbles upon a shocking news report about a man who can heal himself. A guy who doctors said fell from the 15th floor and shattered his bones and organs beyond repair. But not long after, the man began to heal himself all over again. Thinking about supernatural powers made Hang Fong remember he had secret tricks, so he turned on the familiar green glow above his hand and tried to mend his broken bone. But the green energy fizzled out without accomplishing a single thing. He gave another try, but it still didn't work. With only failure in his future, he admitted defeat, slumped back onto the couch, and wished his brief moment of hope had never happened. After hours of mindless scrolling, he finally let himself drift into a dream. In his dream, he rocked in a rough old outfit while riding a huge goat, leading an entire wild flock that flew through the air with their heads flapping wildly behind him. From this wide view, you can see the huge horde trailing right behind him. But suddenly, the fun ride screeched to a halt when the goat slammed on its brakes and tossed him off. He hurt his leg when he fell, and then one of the goats started licking the wound. He thinks the goat's strange act of kindness is too much and pushes it away, only to make the goat angry by whipping out its ridiculously long tongue, looping it around Hang Fong's leg, and yanking him straight up into the sky. The spot on his leg where the tongue is wrapped around begins to heal right before your eyes. Just then, Hang Fong jolted awake, drenched in a cold sweat, completely shaken by the nightmare that had left him trembling from head to toe. Suddenly, he sees his leg shine with green light as it heals itself. Soon after, he slowly unwrapped his bandages and gently placed his foot on the floor. Surprisingly, it didn't hurt a bit, seeming like that green light helped him heal once he finally drifted off to sleep. To prove his crazy idea, he grabs a sharp knife and tries to cut himself, hoping it will restart the healing process. His hand shakes as he reluctantly cuts a tiny slice into his index finger. As he tests out his new power, let's head back outside where the angry crowd of neighbors has finally found a good use for their energy and, thanks to working together, they've cleared the path right in front of the main gate. All the credit belongs to Jang, whose rousing words of unity got everyone moving. Jang then gives a special bonus to the old man who had worked the hardest. The old man then praised the twins for working just as hard as he had. Then there's the beloved, broken nurse Jingyan slipping on the snowy ground, but the twins see her in trouble and rush over to pull her up. After that, the twins get back to clearing the way and tell her to call if she needs more help. Jinong sees the snow coming down hard, so he tells everyone to race to the store and hurry back right away. Mentioning supplies, the old man suddenly recalls something he hadn't thought worth mentioning until Jang insisted. The old man whispers about a rumor from a few days ago, saying someone was seen driving a small truck full of supplies, pretending just to move in. Well, Jung isn't fazed by it, since it's completely normal for someone new to carry all their things when moving into an apartment. But then the old man adds a fascinating detail to his tale. He spotted a guy with gas tanks and a fireplace packed in his truck, which sure wasn't normal moving stuff and looked like someone was getting ready to survive the winter. Before they could even think about it, the twins came back with their update. Just then, a stranger popped up out of nowhere, listening to the old man's story with big eyes, ready to learn all about his winter survival plans. But this curious guy gets hit with a snowball by Lu Yan, who wants him to stop slacking and get back to work. Jang steps in to end the arguing and tells everyone to move out since the main path is clear. Nurse Jin is just as excited about going shopping. In the meantime, the old man asks Jang what he thinks, wondering if the new guy already knows about the blizzard coming. Jang pauses for a moment, then carefully sidesteps the question. He says the blizzard will clear up soon, so there is no reason to worry. If the storm never quits, they're lucky to have neighbors stocked with supplies to keep everyone alive, which turns out to be a real blessing. As the snowstorm gets fiercer, everyone speeds up to keep reaching the store. While our lazy friend Hang Fong is still asleep in his comfy apartment, his nap is suddenly broken by a knock at the door and a familiar voice calling him out. When he opens the door, he finds homeless Joe holding exactly the special items his friend had asked for. The boss's promised gift arrived thanks to Brother Lee, who had stocked up on supplies so he didn't have to run through the cold city like everyone else, and Han Feng was truly grateful he braved the weather to bring it. Brother Lee also held some very interesting facts that rumors had already started to spread about. Last night, some mystery figure totally emptied the shelves at the Eastern District supermarket, and when Boss Lu's gang tried to leave the snow yesterday, they found nothing but empty aisles. Han Feng couldn't believe anyone could clear out such a huge store in just one night, but Brother Lee insisted it was true, so Han Feng began to realize that stranger things were happening and that he wasn't the only one with superpowers. Brother Lee suddenly spoke up, telling Han Feng to bundle up and stay safe. After saying his goodbyes and walking away, our hero was finally alone to think things over. He kept trying to make sense of last night's mystery. How could anyone possibly clear out an entire supermarket in just one night? All he could think of was that a superhero from a comic book, the kind who can stash endless supplies in a secret pocket, must have done it. The only question left was whether people with such powers could really live in this world. The answer was clear. If he had superpowers, then so could anyone else. Finding this out was unsettling, so Hanfang knew he couldn't waste a second. He needed to understand his superpowers inside and out, so he'd have a plan when facing others like him. And with his diary open, he began studying what he knew, that his powers reacted to all kinds of food, both plant and animal. Thanks to it, he could make his food grow big and cook it fast, even if it tasted terrible. But he soon learned that it didn't work for everything and often failed. Hanfang kept wondering why it was so hard to grow soybeans or meat, since the chances of success were tiny. Suddenly, the soybean in his hand exploded into an unpleasant green cloud. Instead of a normal plant, our hero held a rock in his hand, and it smelled terrible. This failure rate was getting on his nerves, so Hanfang knew he had to learn to use his power better and decided to start practicing hard. In the end, there's no shortcut to learning a skill but practice, so he worked late into the night without ever taking a break. Finally, he succeeded, holding a fresh and living soybean plant brimming with pods in his hands. That success didn't come easily to him. He was sweating so hard he was starting to heat up his whole apartment. But that was the cost he paid to learn the secrets that made him win more often. He learned that green light energy isn't always the same, so he had to figure out just how long to shine it on each product based on what it needed to grow. If you don't time it right, you'll just end up with a burnt, smelly rock because you need to know the perfect cooking time for each one. This reminds me of Hanfang, a popular music and dance game from 10 years ago where you had to press the right buttons in rhythm at the perfect moment. It was also possible that energy could be matched to directions like up, down, right, and left, while the energy fed into the object had to be perfect every second until a critical moment was reached and the whole process had to be halted. If you do it right, you'll see success because every single soybean will grow into a plant. After successfully working with plants, Hanfang decided to try meat next, though he quickly realized that meat was very different from vegetables. If you mess up the process, the meat turns into a nasty black mess. But the rules for cooking that meat still had to be much the same. The first step was figuring out exactly how much energy the meat required, and while everything seemed to be going perfectly according to plan, there was a sudden problem. The chicken leg burst open just like the others, spilling a nasty black slurry that made it look like he'd take forever to learn how to cook meat compared to plants. Hanfang tried again and again, but failure followed every time. One chicken leg after another burst open. It looked like there was no end to the failures. So our hero lost his patience and screamed in despair at the game's growing difficulty. But he refused to quit even as the snow piled up outside and the cold got worse. Traces of the mess were everywhere in the kitchen. And now came the moment of truth with the very last chicken leg, while our hero moved on autopilot with a blank stare, no longer even hoping to succeed. Energy surged up and down, left and right, shifting from red to green in a wild dance. He felt like he was stuck in a frustrating, tiny game where a single mistake forced him to start over, keeping the tension sky high as one round ended and another began. This time, Hanfang pulled it off, making the chicken leg grow until it was huge. Our hero sneered with disdain, declared it all worth it, and then collapsed onto the floor, utterly exhausted but filled with happiness. He had finally figured out how to make real meat in his own lab. Every day, the weather turned worse, and by July 17th, the news shouted that snow was burying the whole country for the third day in a row, a rare disaster happening only once in thousands of years. So the leaders are working hard to keep people safe and fed. Hanfang slept through the night, but the news woke him up the next morning. Hanfang had heard all these empty warnings and promises before, just like in his past life, where everyone was told to wait out the snowstorm until supplies arrived and everything was fixed. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a message, and right after that, a bunch of others kept popping up. Hanfang instantly noticed the group of neighbors from his own home had started making noise again, and he simply couldn't resist jumping into the conversation. The commotion was unbelievable, with everyone talking about the morning news, some hoping rescuers would come to help, while others dismissed it as empty promises and started planning to save themselves. While everyone else watched the news, one avatar stepped out from the crowd to challenge a gullible stranger about what they really believed. Old Uncle Lou didn't believe the TV news, insisting that if the government was in control, the rescue teams would have been there already. Instead, he'd heard from old friends that the government was secretly building armored trucks, tanks, and heavy weapons right in City A, the nation's capital. They're likely getting ready for the war that is about to start. After hearing the scary possibility of a war against a stranger, a freezing silence spread through the group chat of nervous survivors. Then worry spread like wildfire as everyone turned to Uncle Lu to confirm the truth, fearing that if his words were real, they might have lost everything. Meanwhile, Han Fong was totally fascinated by the war issue, having heard about this coming conflict in his past life. Jang cut through the chaos to insist that if Uncle Lu was right, they needed to start doing whatever it takes right now to keep everyone alive. Seeing that some neighbors had already run out of supplies and didn't know if government help was coming, he suggested setting up a plan to support those struggling. He urged everyone with extra supplies to share them, and Mr. Jang stepped up right then to give away half his stash to help those who needed it. The other owners whispered quickly about what was being suggested. One man wholeheartedly backed Mr. Jang's plan since everyone needed to survive the crisis, promising to give what he could and even pulling Lai Heiona into the effort. She knew that crazy guy, Wu Kuan-yu, was just trying to humiliate her in front of everyone because she had rejected him before. Lai Heiona had to play the weak, apologetic girl to hide her defense since she had no supplies left, but her fans were quick to jump to the witch's defense. That little row nearly ruined their plan to come together for a good cause. But then donations began to pour in, for surely Mr. Jang's passionate speech moved many hearts, and people rushed to bring food, clothes, medicine, and everything else they needed. Jang thanked everyone for their help and decided to appoint some people to manage the growing group of helpers. He would naturally lead the team as an interim emergency committee that plans and hands out donated supplies. Han Fong smirked at the announcement, recognizing the temporary committee scheme from his past life before anyone realized it was just a plot to steal others' resources. It was July 19th, the 5th day of the apocalypse, and the air outside had already frozen to minus 40 degrees. Now was the day the building's heat finally gave out because the frost had grown so fierce. Everyone struggled to keep warm with clever tricks since they had no heaters. A few people managed to start tiny fires inside their homes, just like in the past, but things were already terrible and only getting worse. Everyone else had their own problems, but our MC, Han Feng, was perfectly prepared with his failed charcoal experiments, ready to keep his fireplace burning bright. A fizzy glass of cola and a delicious slice of strawberry cake sat waiting on the table. While Han Feng sat there blissfully ignoring the world to play his single-player game, his quiet moment was shattered by a phone call that came in suddenly. After pausing his game, he answered the phone while sipping a Coke and learned that the person in charge of Block 8 needed extra hands in the basement car park to clear the roads within 20 minutes. Han Feng held back the urge to curse at this stranger, wondering how the others still didn't get it while the snow kept piling up. Reluctantly, Han Feng leaves his safe home to head to the main lobby because falling out with his neighbors would be troublesome and he has to keep his secret safe. As soon as they saw the gate, it was clear the snow had trapped them inside. Other volunteers were furious to see the paths they had cleared wiped out by the highest snow pile they had ever seen. Deciding to at least get the door open, the volunteers spotted Han Feng and called him over to help with the entrance. They piled all their weight against the door and pushed hard on the count of 3. To everyone's shock, prying open the door flooded the lobby with deep snow and left everyone exposed to the fury of the storm outside. The storm was so fierce that no one could survive the freezing cold, and getting too close meant that even opening your eyes might leave you blind. Han Feng wished he'd stayed on his warm couch instead of freezing outside to do hard work, because going out in that weather was basically a one-way ticket to death. Thankfully, the other volunteers soon realized it was too crazy to go out in that heat. Speaking of idiots, he finally arrived, and the voice that greeted Han Feng was all too familiar. It was none other than the homeless Joe, also known as Brother Lee, who was roasting everyone for acting like cowards instead of standing tall when tough times hit. The volunteers shivered in their boots, desperately trying to talk Brother Lee out of his foolish plan to face the dangerous snowstorm, even though he was built different and seemed untouched by the cold. First, he finished his cigarette in a single, deep drag. Brother Lee, feeling wild and excited to get going, charged straight through the snow and grabbed everyone to keep them trapped inside. The fool began chanting like an anime character, wildly punching the snow until it scattered everywhere, and he kept it up for quite a while. He even dug a hole big enough for a homeless man right in the middle of that massive pile of snow, and then the silence fell. After a short while, the only sounds the volunteers heard were confused shouts for help coming from beneath the snow. The others had to pull frozen, purple-faced Joe out of the snow after he got stuck underneath it. The volunteers sighed and shut the gate, knowing it was time to stop trying to go outside. Han Feng rushed up to his brother Lee to check on the foolish gangster and make sure he was okay. He told everyone to head to the car park first to find the person in charge, so they could decide their next move once the snow finally stopped. With a blizzard raging so hard across the world, the problem was far too big for people to fix it on their own. Down in the underground car park, the air felt a little warmer and more cozy than up above. Mr. Jang, the real boss, stood surrounded by the owners and agreed to pause the clearing work after hearing reports from the lobby, deciding that the basement car park would now be the place for donations and collections. Hanfang hung back in the shadows for the very first time he met that Jang guy from the group chat. This meant the man who started that scam committee was the same one who used his kind words and fake friendliness to trick everyone into thinking they were united. Mr. Zhang watched as the room flooded with donations from so many owners. He felt thankful for the generous gifts that gave hope to those struggling. The air in the car park felt light and hopeful, with everyone basking in the glow of their kind deeds. Yet this shared sense of unity was an illusion built on their desperate need to survive. Hanfang hid a secret they couldn't share yet, knowing that as the disaster dragged on forever, their decision to give up their resources would soon turn into a deep regret. Brother Li, still shaking from a stunt he just pulled, decided to head up first to say goodbye to Hanfang. Hanfang glanced around the parking lot and spotted someone who caught his eye. It was that airhead nurse he'd met when he broke his leg, now wearing a cute winter onesie and clumsily pushing a stack of boxes through the crowded committee. Because she felt so awkward, she finally bumped into a few of the guys standing around. If it hadn't been for Hanfang diving in to catch her before she hit the floor, she would have slid right to the ground. And while he held her in his box, he asked if the blushing nurse was okay. After she finally opened her eyes, she thanked him for saving her, and then realized that the man beside her was Hanfang in the hospital. Then she realized his leg was still badly hurt, so he couldn't possibly catch anyone falling. Hanfang realized he had rushed into trouble without thinking and now scrambled to find a way out. He stumbled over his words to say that he had always bounced back fast since he was young. He looked so nervous with all his jerky moves that it wasn't convincing at all. Luckily, the nurse was so unaware of his lies that she only saw how fast he was getting better. Hanfang offered to help her carry her heavy boxes, and even though she tried to refuse at first, our boy kept insisting until she finally gave him her trust. The moment he grabbed the supplies, he was shocked at just how heavy they were. They felt too heavy to be normal, so he asked her what was inside, and she told him it was mostly medical supplies she was giving away to help people in need. She admitted the bags felt a bit heavy, but promised she could carry them all the way to the donation spot without trouble. You could easily pack more supplies for Hanfang, and he'd happily carry them all, just because you were so kind and beautiful to him. Since she boasted about being tougher than most men, the nurse kept telling her not to overdo it, especially when she grew quiet and guarded about the reason for her strength. Hearing those strange words made Hanfang want to know more, but she felt awkward bringing it up and apologized, admitting that something odd had happened recently that she couldn't quite explain, and even after walking and talking for a while, she still hadn't learned his name. Hanfang smiled and introduced himself back. The angelic nurse named herself Jean Shu, and her wide grin showed just how much she loved this surprise visit. Every time he saw that smile, he couldn't find a single word to say. He almost made it in, but Nurse Jin asked what he did, and his honest answer that he was unemployed turned him away, leaving him to fumble a win so close to the finish line. Thanks to some clever thinking, an impatient man walking by accidentally bumped into Nurse Jin and knocked her off her feet. As she struggled to stay balanced, she finally tumbled onto Hanfang, who was the only one she could hold onto to steady herself. This also caused her soft breast to suddenly press right into Hanfang's arm. With no wrist to worry about, Hanfang simply stood there and enjoyed the moment. Nurse Jin quickly stepped back and said she was sorry, but Hanfang quickly assured her it was okay. This would have been a perfect first meeting if Lai Hyona hadn't shown up like a hungry, freezing zombie to rush at Hanfang. Acting like a parasite, the witch lunged at Hanfang and pressed her chest against his arm, then slowly grabbed him to ask about the pink-haired lady and whether she was a friend. Nurse Jin felt right at home and snatched the box from Hanfang's hands, eager to finish her paperwork so she could get back to the two friends chatting. Hanfang asked why Hona was down here while he sadly watched Nurse Jin dash for the donation point, and the witch explained that she had come to grab some supplies because she was worried about Hanfang staying so still. He rubbed his head and said he was about to send a message, but she called him a liar because she saw him chatting happily with another woman just moments ago. Then someone asked if he had any extra food left at home, and she mentioned she was nearly out and wondered if she could borrow a bit from Hanfang's. Instead of getting mad, he just gave a smug grin. Hanfang kept up his fake sad act, saying he had almost no food left to share, but promised to give some to anyone who actually replied to his messages. He stepped forward, grabbed the witch around the waist, and asked if she'd come with him for a few days. The witch stumbled for a second, stunned to see her usual submissive self acting so bold. She pushed him away with a smile, insisting that if Hanfeng really wanted to chat, he could just do it online. Seeing that as a hard no, Hanfeng turned around and started heading back to his place. In a desperate struggle, the witch snatched him before he could run, telling him to wait while she noted how much he had changed, and Hyona added that she had always taken her feelings very seriously. Hyona used her most puppy-like eyes to swear she wasn't only in it for Hanfeng's money, but asked for a little more time to prove she meant something serious. Hanfeng watched her performance, his cheeks burning with a deep blush. Luckily, he checked himself right away, because if he hadn't already died by her hands, he would have believed her words, but right now he just wanted to tear her ugly mask off. The truth was he still didn't know who the man behind the witch really was, but thinking it over, he realized he could just keep acting like he did before and let Hyona naturally bring the man to him, this time with better preparation and their powerful weapons like Hanfeng's sniper rifle and a steel bat ready to go. Seeing this, he chose not to stir things up and joked he was just teasing, leaving the witch feeling a bit silly for putting on another fake act for a laugh. Still, Hanfeng promised to wait for her message so he could bring food the next day. Finally, they waved goodbye, and she even told him to reach out if he ever needed to talk. As the witch stepped out of the car park, a wicked grin slowly curled up the corners of her evil mouth. She had no idea that Hanfeng was actually the one pulling the strings on the Loki this time, and he was just loving the chance to mess with her. 2 days went by with no news from Hanfeng to the witch. This turned into Lai Hyona blowing up his phone with angry text messages about the promised supplies. Hanfeng just let all the salty messages pile up while he enjoyed a sizzling steak dinner and a fizzy drink. It would be amazing to feast on delicious meat you figured out how to cook while torturing the witch who killed you in your past life, especially on a cold day when everyone else is shivering but you are sweating in your bathrobe feeling like a total hero. He wasn't just hanging out doing nothing for the last few days either. He ran many tests that proved his meat couldn't grow forever, yet just like soybeans, it could be made in endless amounts, and he already had pounds of it ready. For every batch of bean sprouts he grew, he'd save half to plant more beans and eat the other half himself. He could easily use that same trick on meat, so under the red and green lights, just half a steak and a few soybeans would magically become a full steak. By repeating the same trick, he discovered he could create endless amounts of steak and finally stop worrying about ever going hungry again. Even on the 18th day of this impossible winter, TV crews were still braving the storm in August, and the sunny Maldive Islands near the equator had somehow plunged to a freezing minus 42 degrees. The whole island was swallowed by ice and snow, and the ocean was freezing so fast you could see it happening with your own eyes. It was completely unbelievable. Experts say the ice layer was 55 centimeters thick, and we've seen this same strange thing happen in other warm countries near the equator. While Hanfeng laughed at the news on his big screen, reality was much darker than the reports showed, and his peaceful wine sip turned to shock when a sudden noise from outside sent a jolt through him. Hanfeng rushed to the window and flung open the curtains to see a building burning in the distance, marking the 7th explosion in just a few days, a scary pattern that left him clueless about the cause, but certain that things were heading for trouble. There were also more military helicopters buzzing through the city than before. If he had no idea what was going on, neither did any of the other survivors. The chaos outside had everyone scrambling to set up a makeshift camp in the basement parking lot just to trade for food and supplies. Human greed is endless, so some folks started taking advantage of others, which sparked a lot of fights. Right in the middle of it all stood Mr. Jiang, still playing the part of the steady leader who gave free help to those who had nothing. Today was special for Hanfeng as he joined the others in the basement car park, but just a few minutes outside his home and the biting cold was already creeping into his bones. Every time he left his home, he wished he never had gone. The only reason he came down was to get some useful information, because without it, he'd never dare show his face to those people again. Just as he was about to reset, he remembered a rebellion taking over the neighborhood that seemed connected to the people down here who were still honoring their promise to share resources instead of scamming everyone. Hanfeng decided to dig into the messy chaos to figure out what was really going on. The long lines in the collection area showed that many households were running low on supplies. At the front of the line, a man grumbled that he got so little after donating huge boxes of supplies, while Mr. Jiang insisted everyone received an equal share. With just a can of food and a sausage in hand, the man demanded his donated supplies back, but the committee simply couldn't give them up. With the disaster still unfolding, Mr. Jiang pushed the man to see the bigger picture and promised to pay him back many times over once things calmed. But in that moment of uncertainty, a promise of future money meant nothing. Soon, the rest of the line turned on the whiny man, yelling at him to stop acting so shameless and just move along. Before long, an angry crowd had gathered around the shameless man who just wanted to get a few more supplies for his family, and they were completely controlled by the interim committee. Hanfang knew the bosses had no choice but to hold on to their resources, no matter how bad things got. But it was just as disgraceful to stand on a moral high horse while others had given more resources right when the crisis began. The man himself, a true legend, finally showed up again in the basement. It wasn't just any homeless man, it was Brother Lee, who looked so frail and sickly now that he was barely recognizable compared to just a few days ago. It had been ages since the Gun brothers last met, and while Brother Lee insisted he was fine, he was clearly shaking from fear and the cold, proving he was far from okay. Brother Lee finally confessed that he had been struggling so hard he could only survive by drinking water to keep his hunger at bay, since there was no food left for him. When the donation drive was going strong, he gave most of his supplies to the committee until his own stash ran dry before the promised end of the snowstorm. Besides, the food the committee gave out wasn't enough, and Brother Lee wishes he had kept more of his own stash just in case the weather turned so bad. Hanfang saw a way to help Brother Lee, so he grabbed the gangster and whispered a favor into his ear. Brother Lee pulled away in shock, while little Hanfang calmly handed over just 4 packs of instant noodles and 2 sausages for a simple job, insisting would barely scratch the surface of his supplies. The gangster mistook his little brother's offer of food for a plea for forgiveness and cried, promising to never forget such kindness. Brother Lee grabbed Hanfang's arm with serious determination, promising to handle this small problem quietly and saying he'd just stop by Hanfang's house later for a bite to eat. First, hungry Brother Lee had to stand in line to grab some food to fill his belly. Hanfang was thrilled with his clever deal, because now he could gather all the needed info from just a few packs of noodles and sausages without ever having to bother coming down here himself. He felt a little bad for Lee, but staying cozy on his sofa with good food and games was way more important than getting involved in other people's lives. Hanfang was almost enjoying a secret ride in the basement car park until a familiar face spotted him. The moment he heard his name called, a palm flew straight toward his face, and Lee Hyona greeted him with a sharp slap right across Hanfang's cheek. He never saw this attack coming so early, and he had no idea how to handle this crazy situation. With fire in her eyes, Hona told Hanfang he was a letdown and then screamed at him for ignoring her hungry pleas. She shouted loud enough for everyone in the car park to hear. Hanfang froze in his tracks, standing still as he tried to make sense of what was unfolding around him. The witch he'd been teasing just slapped him hard across the face right in front of everyone. He hadn't even finished paying off her old debts yet, and now she's barging into his place and hitting him without any reason. His rage was boiling over so fast that he felt it was sacrilege, convinced that Lee Hyona still treated him like a pathetic pushover who could be bullied anytime. He stayed quiet while she yelled at him for not answering, calling him deaf and mute and demanding he finally speak. Hanfang took a deep breath as the cold smoke filled the air. He then put on a fresh act, sincerely apologizing to Hyona and claiming that his supplies had been stolen. He rushed out to grab his keys and left the delivery at his door, only to find the supplies vanished when he came back, and though Hanfang searched for the thief, he found no clues. By now, she looked like a junkie reaching for her next dose, pleading with him if he still had any supplies hidden away. He replied that he had very little, just enough to survive a few days if he limited himself to 1 meal each day. When he mentioned there was food left, Hyona's wild expression suddenly turned into a blushing smile, and she switched back to her sweet, innocent self so perfectly that no one could tell the difference. When she begged Hanfang to share his food and starve for 2 days at a time to survive the disaster, she looked completely crazy. Hanfang could hardly stand the shamelessness of this woman, and it was terrifying that she could say such selfish things without even flinching. To her, that man was just a tool she kept in her pocket for when she needed him. Hanfang smiled and lovingly agreed, letting her keep believing that. He pretended to be a man who kept his word and shared his food with a girl, even when she begged for it now, because he insisted on finishing his packing work before delivering it at night. She joked that she'd be waiting for his message tonight, while Hona headed home, first to wish him well and hope he stays healthy amidst the flu. Hanfang bid her goodbye too, while a dark scheme was already taking shape in his greedy mind. By 8 o'clock in the evening, Lai Hyona was already pestering Hanfang for a meal. She grew so fed up that she climbed down to the lobby near his room around 9:30, shivering alone in the cold halls, only to find that Hanfang had already switched back to his favorite game of catching her interest and then vanishing without a trace. After weeks of freezing silence and no repairs, the elevator finally gave up the ghost. If she truly meant to make a scene, she'd have to climb the stairs all the way to Hanfang's apartment. With no other option, Lee Hyona forced herself to ignore her fear and stepped onto the spooky staircase. Halfway up the mountain, she was already worn out and shivering from the freezing cold, making the climb feel like a nightmare, but the supplies kept her going. She was so worn out from going without food for days that every step up the stairs drained her last bit of strength. You have to respect her, because almost no one else would climb all the way up 16 flights of stairs just to steal food, especially when the emergency lights on those upper floors were already broken. That only made her climb deeper into the shadows and into the creepier parts. When Lee Hyona heard a strange noise, she nervously called out to see who was there. As she waited for a black plastic bag to drop from above and crash on her head, Hyona stood frozen in shock, unable to move. The heavy bag hit the floor with a loud boom, turning the emergency lights back on and filling the stairs with a thick cloud of white dust. The ever-smiling Lee Hyona got blasted with flour all over her head and body, while Hanfong, who claimed he rushed over after falling asleep and saw her message, accidentally dropped the bag of supplies when the lights went out. Hyona scrubbed the flour and plastic from her hair and coat, feeling gross as her dark true self peeked through her fake smile. Hanfeng was very happy with the sight because his mean prank for her was still being built. He handed over another plastic bag and told the witch it held everything he had left for her. When she looked closer, she saw that nearly everything was rotten, making the place look like a trash heap instead of food store. Playing the fool, Hanfeng scratched the back of his head and claimed he worked extra hard to keep these leftovers in stock, even though there was rotting meat mixed in there. Then he smoothly switched to acting hurt, snatched the plastic bag, and told her to hand it back if she didn't like it. Terrified of another day without food, the witch snatched the bag away, insisting it was hers. Hanfeng studied her from head to toe, then scoffed at himself. Right before him stood the goddess he had chased with everything he had. Right now, she looked like a ragged homeless person shivering outside on a freezing winter night, digging through a trash bag to find something edible in the rotting pile. She even snatched the last bag of flour from Hanfeng's hand with a greedy grab. Lai Hyona was happily celebrating with a half bag of flour, not even caring that she had been covered in white powder just moments before. She vanished without a single word of thanks or goodbye, but Hanfeng didn't care since feeding her trash was enough to make the witch's stomach hurt for a few days. With the rain still pouring down, she couldn't take a shower, so she'd have to keep walking around with all those wet flowers stuck to her skin for a while. As Hanfeng happily made his way home, he suddenly felt something strange, pretending not to notice even as something moved in the background. Hanfeng stayed calm and walked with his usual ease to join his team. He walked out of the stairwell acting like nothing was wrong, but a dark figure was quietly following him just behind him. It had to be a person, because I could see them wearing snow boots. Hanfeng used the element of surprise to sneak behind the door and spring on the stranger following him. He lunged forward, grabbed the mysterious figure tightly, and slammed them onto the ground. Just as Hanfeng was about to punch the spy, something made him freeze, and his anger vanished in an instant. The person chasing him was a girl with messy hair, tired eyes, and huge glasses, and I was like, what the heck is happening here? Hanfeng knew there was only one reason for her late arrival. She was spying on him, so he had to find out what she really wanted. All he got back was silence and a blank stare from under her glasses, showing she wasn't someone who liked to chat. She stayed silent, so Hanfeng, feeling shocked by her quietness, chose to bring up serious points to finally get her to speak. He threatened to rip her coat off in the freezing cold unless she started talking. Even that didn't make her talk, so Hanfeng gave up teasing her and decided to let her go this time. Next time, she might not get the same help if she tries to spy on him. She had to quit her quiet play and rush home before she froze. Just as our hero was ready to go, he suddenly felt a hand grab his sleeve. This quiet girl wouldn't let him walk away, even though Hanfeng had no clue what she wanted, so he snapped at her to stop staring and demanded to know her purpose before he forced her to leave. Instead of speaking, she pointed at something and tugged our hero along, so even the clumsy Hanfeng knew he was being shown a secret. They walked into her room. It was so warm and bright inside that our hero stood there speechless. He looked around and saw huge piles of boxes filled with supplies, even though some were empty and the room was full of trash, which made him wonder if this girl had planned ahead for the apocalypse. Hanfeng straight up asked her if she knew the ice apocalypse was coming, and to his shock, she finally answered. Even though she spoke in a weird way, she had actually done the math herself and found that it pointed to a coming ice age. She turned out to be the weird chatter who'd been warning about the coming ice apocalypse before it hit, which confused Hanfeng since he couldn't see how just some math and reading could predict the future, and he knew she wasn't bringing him here just to chat about her studies. And he was right. She had finally shown him why it had to be this way. In the girl's room, a wall of screens flickered with constant CCTV footage. Our hero was the star of every clip, including one where he sneezed while hauling boxes up an elevator. By the second day, a delivery service was hauling a dozen gas cans right into his room. On the third day, Brother Lee brought him a gun case and everything else he needed. It turns out Hanfeng's first hunch about the girl was right. She had been watching him for a long time. She felt so relaxed and warm in her room that she didn't hesitate to strip off her heavy winter clothes right there in front of our hero. Hanfeng clumsily asked why she was changing clothes, missing that she just said it was hot while he clearly thought about something else. Why is she doing this right in front of him? He insisted that she stop right now and pull her pants back up. Even though he didn't want to, he finally had to take off his coat after a while. This girl held secrets that kept him trapped until he solved the problem, and Hanfeng finally figured out she was watching him because she suspected he was stockpiling food before the snow even fell, though she wasn't trying to blackmail him, but rather just testing if he was smart enough to work with her. Now, all that was left was to figure out just what she meant by working together. Talking was too hard for her, so the girl chose to show him things as they went, hoping he'd finally get it. Hanfeng couldn't even guess what she would do with those strange movements. Of course, she pulled the generator from behind the bed, not to attack, but to ask Hanfeng to teach her how to use it, because while she knew everything about computers and books, she desperately needed to learn the simple skills required to survive. After a bit of time, the generator hummed along nicely, and we'll pretend it was a quiet hydrogen fuel machine even though running it inside a room is a terrible idea. Hanfeng thought her asking would finally stop, but it wasn't. Her blue eyes begged for help once more. This time, the steam-powered boiler is ready to heat things up. Our hero quickly set it up, so now she'll have hot water running all day thanks to the generator. But Hanfeng still told her to be careful and remember to turn off the tap. Next, she asked for help with the refrigerator, which was a total mess. So our hero had to teach her that raw meat belongs in the freezer to stop it from going bad, and that she must keep everything clean to avoid getting sick, because he wasn't going to do all that work for her, and she had to take care of it herself. Hanfeng couldn't believe she survived this long without knowing such simple things. So he had to teach her how to hook up the gas can to the stove, making her remember every safety rule and repeat his moves exactly. Things only got messier from there, so Hanfeng had to teach her how to cook and roast food over the fire until their exhausted hero was finally ready to enjoy a delicious dinner while it was still hot. He couldn't figure out how he ended up spending his whole day taking care of an adult child who was too weak to look after herself. Even though she didn't look embarrassed a bit, the dinner was simply too delicious to ignore. Hanfeng saw that no one understood him, so he awkwardly slipped away by claiming he was just joking. His legs felt so heavy from the long day that all he could think about was sinking into his warm bed. It seemed he wasn't the only one who had given up for the day, because when he finally looked at the girl, she was already fast asleep, sprawled out on the table with her food as a pillow, and Hanfeng couldn't remember ever seeing someone fall asleep while eating before. Even though he hesitated, he made up his mind to lift her and walk her over to the bed. Who'd have guessed he'd spend the whole day teaching a kid? All night long, the snow poured down harder and the air grew colder. Hanfeng had just opened his eyes when guests were already pounding on his door. It was the same girl again, showing up with a huge pile of gifts to thank him for his help, which left even our hero totally surprised. But after Hanfeng carried the boxes away, she stayed right at the door refusing to leave, and he knew that look meant she wanted another favor. She brought a generator and asked Hanfeng to teach her again since she'd forgotten yesterday's lessons, and after a few days he realized she was hopelessly clueless about survival. She simply didn't have common sense and couldn't tell what was right for what was wrong. But she refused to quit, so each day she pulled Hanfeng in her room to teach him how to survive and live daily life. After a while, she finally managed to cook something barely edible, but Hanfeng thought it was still an improvement. Before, even dogs wouldn't touch that food, but in an ice apocalypse, humans would line up for it. After waiting so long, Hanfeng finally made up his mind to ask the girl her name. She stepped forward and told him her name was Jo Shingon. Hanfeng still wondered why she spoke so strangely and what was wrong with her, but he refused to leave her alone. While far below in the basement, the scene was chaotic as hungry residents fought over the last of the supplies. Chaos erupted as neighbors grabbed supplies from one another, claiming everything belonged to the powerful, leaving the weak to fall and the strong to take more, marking the end of the community's quiet days. Fighting over things they thought were theirs, people clashed for the resources they believed they deserved. They clung to their meager stolen goods with their lives, turning every attempt to take them into a frenzy of senseless violence. They punched and kicked each other with no mercy until their fists and feet were covered in blood. While everyone was rushing to bring civilization down, Mr. Jiang stayed calm right through the storm. He squeezed the megaphone until it roared like a beast, silencing the fight and leaving everyone clutching their ears as Bro unleashed a sonic attack worthy of a true supervillain. After a few seconds of hearing that grating feedback, Mr. Zhang finally spoke up to the other survivors and asked if they were ready to stop fighting. He grabbed one of the half-dead men and showed him that with so little left, they were playing with their lives, which seemed absolutely foolish. But the crowd remained furious because Mr. Zhang, who started the donation plan, now left them with just a few noodles every few days, leaving them to either die in battle or starve to death. Zhang pretended to listen to their complaints about the missing resources before turning to his people and getting down to work. If they're fighting for such silly reasons, maybe they deserve to starve to death. Mr. Zhang asked who started all this trouble and told everyone to think hard, but the angry crowd just blamed him. He grabbed a piece of bread and began his magic, helping everyone remember the truth of what was happening. Bread that was originally sold for a